I would say for those people who say IRs are a rabbit hole, I would say you're approaching it the wrong way. You're trying to make your sound better, and that's not what it's about. It's about making your sound different for the sake of having a different characteristic, rather than we're really not looking for a better cab or a better sound. Well, hello there. My name is HW, and thank you so much for watching Tone Junkie TV. We're in Rig Manager. Wow. Okay, check it out. This is cabs versus IRs, and I want to talk about why people would use IRs with the Kemper. Now, shameless plug, Tone Junkie just released. We now have 14 IR packs out. We just released like 8 IR packs this weekend, or the weekend this video's out. So let's put that out of the way. I'm going to use a pack that's already been out for a little while. And there's some demos on the channel. You can check them out. But this, I want to specifically talk about IRs versus Kemper cabs. What is the advantage and disadvantage of each? And I want to show you how I'm using IRs in the Kemper and how you might find them useful. Now, before I go any further, I just want to say some people get really sensitive about this. They really kind of get upset in a weird way when you start suggesting that IRs be used in the Kemper. So let's lay the groundwork for this. One of the things I love about the Kemper is that, as Michael Britt would put it, and he told me this one time, and I love this kind of thinking, it's a closed system. The profiler, me, Michael Britt, whoever, can determine what all the parts of the signal chain will be when they release something. And so they know what it's going to sound like with a P90, with a Strat, with a Tele, so they can take responsibility for what they put out. What's difficult about IRs is that people switch and mix and match IRs all the time, and one IR might really be like an IR of a vintage 30, and it's going to fit really well with that Mesa Lone Star amp or that Mesa dual rectifier. But then someone goes and tries to put a 57 Jensen IR on that, against that V30, in like a high gain or a rockin' situation, and they go, why does this thing sound so thin? And it's like, well, it sounds thin because it's a thinner speaker. You could, of course, make it thicker, but really that speaker is meant to complement a much thicker sounding amp, like a Tweed Deluxe or something, right? So in the world of IRs, in the world of the Helix and the Axe and stuff, it's a bit less of a closed system. You have all these external inputs that you can't really be sure about. And one of the beauties of the Kemper is the ease of use. You download a profile, the only thing changing is your guitar and maybe what you're listening through. But now that we have the Kemper Cab and people have high quality studio monitors, we don't need to worry about so much. I can tell how people are going to listen to things. I know what guitars are out there. And so I know how Tone Junkie profiles are going to sound kind of when they're out there in the wild. Now, Kemper cabs versus IRs. This is important because there are certain things Kemper cabs do or can't do that IRs can do. Let me explain. Here is the 72 H3013 profile. And if I come down here to cabs, well, guess what it says? Here's my cab information right here. Orange 412, made at TJ Studios, made by Tone Junkie, 70s Orange 412, blah, 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 manufacturer Celestian. I used a Royer 545. I used a Royer 121 and a 545. I should have noted that was a 121, but if I just put Royer, it's always 121. I note when it's a 101. Check it out. It sounds like this. You heard it at the beginning. Playing this Sir JM Pro. It's a great guitar. I love it. What's really cool is the Kemper gives us the ability to shift up and down the lows. So let's say I say that's too bright. I want to shift down some highs. I can, of course, take those top highs and shift them down the frequency range. Now, by doing that, I've almost already approximated what sort of the normal channel of this amp would sound like. But let's put that back. I'm looking over my camera, sorry. Let's put that back to about where we had it. And now let's shift the lows up so we make it a super small amp. It's not a 412 anymore. That might seem like a sound like, why would you want that? I'll tell you, for a recording environment, you throw that in the in a mix, you can really make a huge sound, and you can really get like a very aggressive. You could throw a little part on there so it sounds like it's coming through a 110 or a 1.8. It's kind of like a usable version of an AM radio. Okay, great. That's all the stuff we can do with Kemper Cabs. But what can we do with IRs that we can't do here? Well, one thing I want to point out is, although we have a character knob that can sort of give us different characters of the cabinet, it really, all that does is increase the peaks and valleys, the distance between them. So whatever the character of your speaker is, if it's very pokey in the high end and it's very lobbed off in the lows, all that's going to do is exaggerate that sort of character even more. What we don't have is any sort of ability in the Kemper natively, outside of like, the Kemper Cab. We don't have any controls over how direct is a microphone or what types of microphones are used. There's a directivity control in the output section when you're using like a Kemper Cab. But if we're not using a Kemper Cab, we're just talking about what can we do with IRs. Here's something that is important to note. With IRs, I'm able to take the same cabinet. Now I'm going to switch over here to TJ Impulse response folder that I just got here. And here are IRs that I shot of this same 412 cabinet. Now, I'm using a Royer 121 and a 545. What if I want to hear this amplifier with just a 57? I'm going to bring it down here, and now it's going to sound like this. Instantly, to me, that is the sound of 57. You've got a lot of the high end, a lot of the high mid-range. There's some low end, but there's not a ton of fullness, not a ton of information to me at the 300, 400 kind of range. There's not a lot of what I would call fullness. Now, let's switch that out for a fat head. Let's go with something very fat. See, now we're going to be able to take away some of that high end, and we're just using a ribbon microphone. Why would this be useful? This could be very useful because we're using the bright sound of this, the bright channel of this amplifier. This is a 70s super lead, and channel 1 is the bright one. Maybe we want to counteract some of that brightness with a fat head microphone to give us a lot of fullness. Now it's going to sound like this. That almost sounds like I switched to the middle position, but I didn't. That was still the lead pickup. There's a fat, full thing that you cannot simply. Now I could apply an EQ. I could make all sorts of changes, and I want to applaud the Kemper. One of the reasons I love the Kemper is when you come in the amplifier section right here, these controls are invaluable, and to me they are pretty much better than what you get out of any other unit. The ability to add compression here, to add clarity. These controls don't exist in an analog world, and I wish they did. Pick attack. These are incredible controls. You can really dial in what you want, and you have this EQ. But if I want to change the voice of what I'm hearing vis-a-vis the microphone, back to a 57. In a recording situation, I could use that with humbuckers and it would fill in, whatever you could perceive as missing from the sound. But I'll tell you, this is a sound I could take and I could pan left and right and double track a rhythm. I could double track that rhythm, and then I can come back in here with my fat head and I can play some other, thing over it. that could be a way in a recording environment I could build a part and really have two guitars complement each other. I even could go get another guitar out. I just played on a track the other day that I got some videos coming out, and I in that video I'm going to go through why it shows why we use different guitars for different parts and how we then EQ the guitars differently so that we could have multiple guitars with multiple guitar parts not stepping on each other. This is one way to achieve it, and I'll tell you, I've been in studio environments when all you're trying to do is get another voice so that you can track another part over another guitar, and it might not be there's a perfect solution of this guitar with this part or this amp with this part. But it's simply to say that once one guitar has recorded a part, you now need to differentiate it in some other way. In some way, in terms of equalization, you need to differentiate its voice if it's going to play another guitar, or else it sounds like one part together. Meaning, if I play a G like this, and I change nothing, when I come up here and do this over it on an overdub, the EQ is going to dictate that my ear is kind of going to put that together. It's going to sound like I'm somehow chording this chord as well as this chord. It's going to sound like an enormous chord. Now that could be cool, but what's a different way to do it, and kind of what we see more commonly, is we might pan parts and we might use different voicings and different EQs so that your ear can sort of hear there's two parts sounding here, you know? One's a clarinet and one's a saxophone. And it's really in the practical world, we may sit around and go, we may always dial in a very saxophone-like part for us because that's what we enjoy. But to use this orchestral example, when you're recording the record, no one wants to be a dork and play the clarinet. But hey, the clarinet part comes through because it sounds different than the saxophone, right? How many cool clarinetists can you name? I can't name any. How many cool saxophonists can you name? I mean, there's a million, right? There's John Coltrane. There's Charlie Bird Parker. There's just the Kenny G. Who's cooler than Kenny G? Come on, right? Anyway, you get my point. Putting in a ribbon microphone with that fat head gives you just a different sound. I don't know, man. It's just like, it's fat and it just makes you want to play like a little different, you know? Whereas here I am with this 57 and I can do a similar thing. See, to me, what goes through my head is when I have that very bright and sort of dynamic microphone sound, that's where I want to put in a lot of the differences in my picking technique, you know? You hear the difference in my fingers there. That's with the pick, without the pick. That to me is like, that's what's that's what dynamic microphones are really great for. Now, let's say I do want to put those two sounds together. Well, I've got my Fat 57 here, and now I'm getting closer to something that could be like the profile itself. Now, I feel like that's a little bit like the best of both worlds, but actually it's pretty fat sounding. So I'm gonna, that was Fat 57.5, and that has like the most fatness mid-range. Let me back up to Fat 57.3 so you can hear a little more, a little less fatness. We have enough of it. To me, that's a really great overall sound. Now, if you want something really vintagey, check out this 545, and I'm going to put on a fairly fat sounding version of it, number 4. Tone Junkie IRs get sort of more balance to more fat as you go up. It's not crazy difference, but it's noticeable. So here's number 4, and here's like most sort of vintagey. That was, of course, the neck. Here's the bridge, so you can really hear a comparison. That, to me, right there is a very vintage sound, that ribbon microphone by itself. There's a really upper end presence roll-off that you could sort of emulate with the Kemper. But again, these are just options. It's options to take one voice and really change it for other things. And that's what I think is cool. You come down here and you go, hey, I want a 545, and here's just another variation, kind of like that 57. Cool. To me, I'm really partial to the 101. If I want something that sounds just very organic, I'll take this 101 at 2 or 3. And you could even lower the gain a bit, lower the volume a little bit, you know? Obviously, we need a little different guitar for that sort of thing, but you get the point. It's a nice presence roll off, and it's just beautiful, sort of just wonderful. I don't know, to me, that's the sound of a lot of just kind of old school records. That sort of, it's like a tapey, vintagey, it's a ribbony sound. It's all that technology. Look, analog technology has this in common with all the different types. It can't retain the high end accurately. And so great analog gear is sort of, I think, the iconic stuff. I mean, think about it. Everything's about replicating the sound, but tape has a warmer sound, right? It rolls off the top end. Tubes have a warm sound. They can have a lot of top end, but they have just a warmth to them, right? Ribbon microphones, right? They can get a lot of top end, but especially like a Royer or something, you'll get more than like a dynamic mic, but it just sounds so natural and warm. The character that all that analog gear has that's favorited is not that it's famous for a reason. It brings in this warmth, and the way it shelves to high end, it just eliminates ear fatigue and unnatural listening sort of kind of environment feeling. You know, it's beautiful. It's beautiful, beautiful. And so what I love about like an old ribbon like that is it does that thing and it brings that to the digital environment. And that's very different than a 57. Now a 57, you throw a 57 on a V30 and you just put any amp through it and you're gonna be heard in a bar. There's a reason the 57 is iconic. You throw it on a guitar speaker and it instantly gives you the sound of a guitar, but with the right emphasis, and it just makes a sound man's job so much easier. You want to make a sound guy hate you? Put a fat head in a live environment on like an already kind of dark amp and go, just EQ it. Dude, you ain't gonna get heard. you're going to be woofy and fat, and there's going to be all sorts of cancellation coming in from the front because that ribbon's going to be taking in info from the front too. It's going to be vibrating the microphone just like your amp is. So you have tons of cancellation. That means even less high end. A dynamic directional microphone is great for what it is. They're great for recording, and that's why you hear them on recordings. But 9 times out of 10, the guitars you listen to are going to be a ribbon and a dynamic mix together, but it might not always be the iteration that I put on the Tone Junkie profiles. Now, in the past, I have done some packs where I've switched up the microphone for different channels, sometimes people like that, sometimes people don't. It's a little bit different. It's nice being able to flip through the Kemper, and you sort of have this constant sound of a fat head and a 57 or a 121 and a 545 or a fat head and a 545. And that's why I just sort of rotate between some of these microphones now. But that's how I use IRs. Using IRs in the Kemper, is it a rabbit hole? It can be if you poke around and just keep trying and don't know what you're doing. I would say for those people who say IRs are a rabbit hole, I would say you're approaching it the wrong way. You're trying to make your sound better, and that's not what it's about. It's about making your sound different for the sake of having a different characteristic, rather than we're really not looking for a better cab or a better sound. The profile sounds great the way it is. We didn't need to change anything, and you're not really going to get to a better sound. It's not a technical thing like that somehow I can shoot an IR that's better than the Kemper Cab. Sometimes the Kemper Cab just has differences than the IR that I would shoot of the same speaker because it's a different day, it's different weather outside, all those things. So to me, IRs in the Kemper are not about getting better, they're about getting different and enjoying something in a different way. I'll do this in a future video, but one of my favorite sounds is a Fender Twin with just a fat head on it, or a Fender Pro Reverb, or a Deluxe. The blackface stuff, the brighter blackface stuff, scoop mid-range, you throw just a single fat head on there, and oh my, you've got such a fat twin sound. It's disgusting how good it is. But at the same time, I'm not going to sit here and lie to you and say a fat head is the greatest mic in the world, especially if I'm trying to capture something high gain. I would never use that by itself. It just isn't going to work. Then there's a reason in heavy music, pretty much anything from Eddie Van Halen, may he rest. There's a reason anything sort of Van Halen gain and up really gets done almost exclusively with 1, 2, and 3 dynamic mics, because the bass content is just so huge. It's difficult to find anything usable coming out of a ribbon close mic'd on that speaker. Anyway, I've talked enough. That's why that's Kemper and IRs. That's how I'm using them. Hey, if you want to put comments down below that say I think IRs are dumb with the Kemper. Look, I get it. You don't need them. We're not trying to make the sound better. We're trying to make it sound different. And if you haven't noticed, this is about being a tone junkie. There's no stone unturned. I've been HW. Thanks so much for listening. Thanks so much for watching. Check out. Please check out the new IRs and grab them if you want them. There's a big sale going on the site right now. So thanks very much. HW out.